My name is Dean Benton. Today we're going to talk about the basic refrigeration cycle and the four main components. The four main components, their job, what they're supposed to do in the system. Any air conditioning refrigeration system must have these four main components in order for it to function properly. So we're going to go over the basic refrigeration cycle today and talk about these components. The four main components of the system would be the compressor, the condenser coil, the metering device, and the evaporator coil. And we're going to take it in that order. The purpose of the compressor is to compress the refrigerant inside the system and pump Freon throughout the system. When we compress that refrigerant, the purpose of that is to compress that refrigerant to a higher temperature and a higher pressure, because we know the heat transfers from a warmer substance to a cooler substance. So we have to warm this refrigerant up in the discharge line warmer than the temperature is outside. So as the compressor pumps this refrigerant, it raises the pressure and temperature. The refrigerant comes out of the compressor as a hot gas. As it goes into the condenser coil, we cool this off with a fan by blowing air across that coil to bring that temperature down inside that refrigerant to condense it down to a liquid. So as we come into the condenser as a hot gas and we condense this to a liquid, what we're actually doing with that heat that is inside that refrigerant is we're rejecting that heat outside. We want to get the heat out of that refrigerant into the air outside the space that we're trying to cool. So as the refrigerant comes through the condenser coil and condenses down to a liquid, it goes into the liquid line where it is a warm liquid. It's not hot anymore. It is still at a high pressure, but it is not as hot as it was going into the condenser because we've rejected some of that heat from that refrigerant. So after we do that, it comes down into the meter device. Our second component, is the condenser coil, where the condensing takes place, where we go from a hot gas to a warm liquid. Travels into the liquid line to the metering device, which is our third main component. The purpose of the metering device, number one, is to meter the correct amount of refrigerant to our evaporator. The second job it is supposed to do is drop the pressure of that refrigerant. Remember, I said this is still at a high pressure, not necessarily a high temperature, but a high pressure. So the metering device drops that pressure. Again, heat transfers from a warmer substance to a cooler substance. So the conditioned space to be cooled would be warmer than the refrigerant after the metering device. So the purpose of that metering device is to drop that pressure and temperature of that refrigerant before it enters the evaporator coil. The temperature of that refrigerant must be cooler than the space that we're trying to cool, so we can absorb heat, and that's what the fourth component does in the system. The evaporator coil absorbs heat from the air being blown across it. So as we cool this refrigerant down below the temperature of the conditioned space, as this liquid refrigerant, it is now a cold mixture as it comes out of the expansion valve or the metering device, feeds into the evaporator coil. With this cold refrigerant, it starts absorbing heat from the air that's being blown across it. As it does that, it takes this liquid refrigerant coming into the coil and evaporates it into a cool gas. So we've added heat here. It's not cold when it comes out, it's cool. So as it comes out of the evaporator into the suction line, back to the compressor, this is a cool gas. Some compressors are refrigerant cooled. So it's important to keep that refrigerant coming out of that evaporator cool. So once again, we leave the compressor as a hot gas into the discharge line to our condenser where we condense it down to a liquid. Once we condense that down to a liquid, it travels down to the metering device where the pressure and temperature is dropped of that refrigerant. As it goes through the evaporator coil, it's colder than the air being blown across the coil, so therefore it absorbs heat from that air and leaves you with cool air. Again, the four main components of the refrigeration system are the compressor, condenser coil, metering device, and evaporator. I hope this has helped you today understanding the basic refrigeration cycle and what that refrigerant does. Thank you.